Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Tag along as we explore the archaeological wonders of Jordan. Hello and welcome back to Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Brandon. Today we continue our travel article. We're talking about Jordan and we're taking a tour through Jordan. We had a lot to talk about yesterday and there were a lot of words we discussed and we got a really good picture of what Jordan is like. And here to help me discuss this for day 2, I have back in the studio with me Pauline and Joe. Welcome back, panelists.
Hey, thank you.
Good to be here.
And I just want to ask our panelists to highlight one thing from yesterday. There are many things, so I don't know if you can get it down to one, but what is one thing from yesterday that you thought was just really spectacular?
Well, like I said, I was amazed to find out about just all of it. I didn't know that such a place existed. I didn't know about the rose-colored sandstone and then the idea of this whole city carved out of it. Just the whole thing sounded amazing.
All right. And Joe?
I'm quite amazed that there is no record of history. And it's one of the world's biggest mysteries. And this makes me want to go and start digging in, no pun intended, a little more to that ancient mystery.
Yeah, that, as I mentioned yesterday, that one sentence where they said 65% of Petra is still underneath our feet, hidden by dust, that really stuck out to me because I like mysteries. I like a good, mystery movie, something like that. And so this kind of falls in line with that and makes me want to visit to see if I can find something,
Another thing that I always appreciate about looking at these articles is sometimes it does spark your curiosity in a way that pushes you to go do your own research. So the last thing we talked about before our day was up yesterday was about the Syrian refugee camps that are a part of the landscape of Jordan now. We all know that there's a horrible war that has been going on there for many years and affected millions of people. And I was wondering, so Jordan, is this a country that I would want to bring my tourism dollars to, so to speak? How have they handled this crisis? Have they been open to refugees? Have they done their best to care for them? Or have they just tried to push them out and treated them awful? I didn't know. So I went and looked it up, and actually I found an article by the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And in April of this year, they'd put out a statement saying, Jordan's generous response towards Syrian refugees has been widely appreciated. And I was just so touched by that. And I thought, oh man, that makes me want to go all the more. I'd be so much more willing to go spend my travel dollars on a country that's doing its best to respond to such a big crisis.
Yeah, and we learned yesterday, at the end of yesterday actually, Jordan has taken in about 1 million people. So that's a lot that they're helping.
Right. And to give you some perspective on how big this is, there's a particular refugee camp, a settlement, that's now the 4th populous area in Jordan.
Wow.
So you have so many people there, it's practically its own city.
That's amazing.
Right. And it's taking a big toll on the country financially. Of course, that's a big financial toll to take on. Yeah. And so, again, it just makes you feel like, I'd like to go be a part of putting some money into their economy. They're really taking on a big struggle I think it's one of the biggest crises in our world right now. I'd love to give my money to people who are in the middle of that struggle while also getting to see one of the 7 modern wonders of the world.
Right.
That just sounds like a win-win.
It does. And you mentioned yesterday, Pauline, that when you set out to plan for a trip, there's a lot that goes involved. And there's a lot involved there. And this is one of the things you mentioned. You look at political ramifications, different things.
Right. Of course, you want to, for yourself, make sure you're going to a place where you're going to be safe. But I also do think about the fact that I have money that I'm spending that I'm putting into the economy. Of course, I'm just one person. I'm not super rich. But I think, man, if everybody traveled that way, if we avoided the places with the worst human rights abuses at the moment and put our money into places that seem to be doing generally some good, that could make a difference in the world.
All right. Well, we have a lot more to talk about concerning Jordan. So if you have your magazine, go ahead and open it up to page 27. You can also follow along on your digital device as we have our first reading for today.
a warm welcome. Before joining our group, I spent 2 days in the vibrant old quarters of the capital, Amman, and clearly stick out. Locals repeatedly asked where I'm from. This is a Muslim country, and when I say America, they all warmly reply, "Welcome to Jordan," often with their hands placed over their hearts. I'm probably welcomed 100 times, in taxis and cafes, while I eat meze plates of hummus and falafel.
Well, when you go somewhere, it's always nice to have a warm welcome, right? You want people to greet you warmly and be friendly. And so we get an example of a warm welcome here, don't we, Joe?
We do. And so as Norma, the author of the article, as she's going into the capital city, Amman, she noticed that, well, she kind of sticks out. And so people can definitely tell that she is not a local.
All right, and she's talking about this. Now, yesterday we learned that she's with a group called Exodus Travels. But before joining the group, she does some traveling on her own. It says here that she is spending 2 days in the vibrant old quarters. So this is an area that is full of life. It's vibrant, and it's the capital city. And she sticks out, as Joe said. And we get some more details about how she introduced herself and more about the country.
Yeah, so I really like this section. So she said, of course, everybody notices her. She doesn't look like everybody else. They immediately ask, "Where are you from?" And then, this is a Muslim country, so maybe she's a little uncertain when she responds and says she's American. What kind of response back she's going to get? Is it going to be hostile? Is it going to be angry? And no, she says everyone just consistently says they all warmly reply, "Welcome to Jordan," often with their hands placed over their hearts.
Wow.
How sweet is that? It just seems extra sincere.
I know. I would just like to go and just receive that warm welcome. Right?
I know. And I was thinking, I really love it when we're given an alternate picture of an area, a part of the world, or a cultural group that maybe we have only thought of in one term. So when I think about the Middle East and Muslims, I don't think of a place as a woman that I want to travel alone, especially as an American woman. And so then you think like Jordan, that's Middle East. Muslim Jordan,
right.
Area. This woman, American, traveling alone is just over and over again being given respect, kind, warm welcome. Like, how good is that to hear?
I know.
I was watching this very interesting sort of city tour. Someone was doing it with a GoPro. It was an American guy. And everyone's like, "Hello, hello." And as he's introduced, "I'm from America." And you get that, actually can see on his kind of videos, people responding in the same way. And it's just so fascinating to see such like a warm welcome given, even with that, like Pauline was mentioning, that kind of image that if you were to be an American, that you wouldn't be welcomed there.
Yeah, but she was welcomed many times, at least 100 times, she said, in taxis and cafes and so forth. And so it seems to be a really welcoming place.
And I'm always humbled by that and inspired to do the same. I hope that if I were to notice somebody sticking out, if they looked Middle Eastern or African or had a very different skin tone or dress, that I would be the person that would say, "Where are you from?" and then do my best to show warmth and welcome and not automatically suspect the foreigner or give a cold reception. So
it goes a long way. It really does to make people feel comfortable. And they're already in a foreign nation, so they probably don't really feel at ease. So it's nice to be kind. Well, we do get a description here also of the kind of food that she ate.
Right. So in cafes, she was able to enjoy meze plates of hummus and falafel. And these meze plates, they are delicious Middle Eastern foods. It's sort of an appetizer with a little bit of everything. You'll see a little variety in what kinds of things you can get, but it's just a really nice, light kind of appetizer.
That's the way I like to eat, a little bit of everything right there in front of me. Yeah.
Hummus and falafel, I usually think of like a Mediterranean food. And if you're not familiar, it's something that is made out of chickpeas, both hummus and falafel.
It's really tasty.
Yes.
I like hummus a lot. Well, as I mentioned, the author of this article, she was traveling with a group called Exodus. Before that, though, she was traveling by herself. In the next section, she is back with the group Exodus. So let's find out where she goes next in our next reading.
back with Exodus. Another day, I'm bouncing in the blanketed bed of a Bedouin-driven Toyota pickup, tearing across the UNESCO-listed Wadi Rum Desert. Nicknamed Valley of the Moon for its rippling peach-pink sands pierced by Titan sandstone and granite peaks. Near a commemorative rock carving, we stop at a rectangular tent woven from black goat's hair and occupied by hospitable Bedouins who offer us tea. Most of the Bedouins I meet speak only Arabic, so Omar gladly translates. He says, "You are a camel." A what? It means you are beautiful, because camels are beautiful with their long eyelashes. I sit down and enjoy the steaming sweet tea, cooked in a charred brass kettle over a rudimentary fire pit. Tea is a main social drink in Jordan, and you're constantly offered a cup in friendship.
Okay, so we have another very descriptive sentence here. The author here, she says, I'm bouncing in the blanketed bed of a Bedouin-driven Toyota pickup. And so you imagine that they're going over some rough terrain as she's bouncing, and then she says here the blanketed bed. What is that referring to, Joe?
Well, a bed here is not the sort of normal bed we think about in our rooms, but it's usually that back of a truck, that open space. And
Of a pickup truck.
Of a pickup truck, right. You have the bed of the truck.
Yeah, that's the flat part, right? And then they've put some blankets on there so it's a little less hard and bumpy, although, I mean, it's just blankets. She didn't say it's like cushion, right? So I'm sure it was not the most comfortable. And she's not just bouncing a little bit because it says the pickup is tearing across the desert. So it's not just going on a slow, leisurely bouncing trip over the, rocky road. They are just flying.
They're on the move.
Yeah.
This sort of extreme bouncing reminds me of when I was in South Africa and they were doing a safari, and the guy says, "Hold tight, it's very bumpy, but we call that African massage."
That's funny.
I wonder if they have a nice name for this kind of thing.
I like that. Well, where are they going? They're going across the UNESCO-listed Wadi Rum Desert. And remind us, Pauline, of what is meant by UNESCO.
Yeah, so this comes up a lot in our tour articles, and that's because it's the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization from the United Nations, and they will pick different spots in the world that they just want to highlight to help preserve and really show off to everyone, like this is a very important point of interest, whether that's historically or as for the environment naturally.
Well, this desert has a nickname. The Wadi Rum Desert is nicknamed Valley of the Moon. Why?
So it's nicknamed Valley of the Moon for those rippling peach pink sands pierced by Titan sandstone and granite peaks. So again, yesterday we were talking about different shades of pink that we were getting here to really highlight the way that the sand looks. And so it's called Valley of the Moon for its sort of geographical and geological features.
All right, and it describes it as rippling peach pink sands. Now, when I think of the word rippling, I think of water. It kind of has those small waves, but here, of course, the sand can kind of ripple as well.
Right, because if you look at pictures of the desert, you'll see how the sands, when the winds hit it, will eventually cause these patterns in the sand that really looks like a pond that you throw in a little stone in, and it has all those little rippling edges. It's just from the wind, from what I understand.
Yeah, and then they have here Titan sandstone, Titan meaning big or large, and then sandstone we've already discussed, but it's just rock that contains a lot of sand. So that's a really descriptive word that they made up, sandstone. It's really clear what the meaning is there. All right, next, in the next paragraph, we talk about commemorative rock carving. What is meant by the word commemorative? It makes me think of, something I keep from my grandmother or something. What does that mean?
Right. So this rock carving has special significance. The word commemorative here is something that we do to remember an event or a person officially and give respect to that great person or event.
Yes, well, I don't know if I would do that for my grandmother, but you think of someone who's really famous or something, they commemorate them, and so they have a statue or something like that. So that makes sense because we're talking about rocks. And so they stop at a rectangular tent woven from black goat's hair. That gets my attention, Pauline.
Yeah, it's not a material you think about being from the West, or even in my experience in Asia. That's not, the normal material we use for textiles. So it's just already an interesting extra detail you get. And inside of this tent is a hospitable Bedouin. Well, actually, there's more than one. There are hospitable Bedouins who offer them tea.
All right. And so, again, people are being kind. They're getting tea. Again, that makes you feel welcomed, right? In this society, they love to give people tea, apparently. And so that's a nice thing that you can enjoy while you're there.
Oh, and hey, Joe, we finally get to the language piece. We were talking about this yesterday, that one of the reasons you usually do big traveling excursions has been for the purpose of learning a language. Well, good news. This is a major world language you can learn. Arabic is spoken, and it says actually most of the people that she saw, most of the Bedouins speak Arabic, and in her case, she hadn't learned enough to go it alone, but she did have her tour guide and also translator who was able to tell her what they were saying.
Right, and this is where you find that certain compliments don't translate very well into English.
What does he say? He says, "You're a camel."
Which is really funny because my only association with that would be like, you're a cow?
Yeah, exactly. That's
Which
is terrible in English.
Would be awful to say to a woman in English. I mean, there's very few things you could say worse, right? So it does not immediately come across as a kind thing to say. So, she asks a question to find out what's going on here. Obviously, context is a good clue in this situation, right? I'm sure the woman who said it, even if she couldn't understand the words, said it in a very kind and warm way. So our author knew there must be some misunderstanding. So she asks for more information.
That's right. And what does it mean?
Well, it means she's beautiful because, camels are beautiful with their long eyelashes.
Sounds good.
Well, that sounds like a very nice compliment when you have it explained.
That's right.
Yeah, but I wouldn't just use it normally. Only in the presence of a Bedouin, I guess.
Right. I wouldn't suggest our listeners go up to anyone and say, "You're so beautiful. You are a camel."
That's right. Especially not in English, right? We don't say that in English. All right, well, she sits down to enjoy the sweet tea. I love sweet tea. This is steaming sweet tea. I'm used to iced tea that is sweet. But she tells us here how it's cooked. It's cooked in a charred brass kettle over a rudimentary fire pit. That word rudimentary is good to know.
Right. Rudimentary just means that it's basic. It's not very complicated. You won't expect it to be a nice fireplace or anything like that. It's probably just, a little hole, and it has sticks and wood for the fire.
All right. Well, Pauline, why are they drinking so much tea?
Well, because it's delicious. And also, we learn it is a main social drink in Jordan. So this is one of the principal ways that they will show hospitality and that they will interact socially. So it is constantly being offered. And they said, you're constantly offered a cup in friendship. So it's also a gesture that shows your welcome. It shows an offering of friendship. So again, displays the warmth of this culture.
All right. And so you can enjoy lots of tea when you visit Jordan. Sounds good to me. Well, there's more to take in. And so as we come to an end or near an end of day 2, we have one last section to read. Let's find out what that's about right now.
Taking in the sights and sounds. In Wadi Rum, I sleep inside a goat hair tent in a rustic Bedouin camp set against wind-buffeting cliffs on the desert floor. The next morning, I wake up the entire camp shrieking as I clumsily mount my ride. Yalla, yalla, Rashid gently urges his herd of 5 sibling camels, meaning let's go. And soon, with just one other traveler, we have the pre-dawn moonscape to ourselves. Atop cud-chewing Alia, I hypnotically watch the flaming sunrise turn the unending vastness a radiant gold. For 90 beyond belief minutes, the only sounds are the camel's feet softly sinking into the powdery dunes and the chirping of Sinai rosefinches. A well-fed stray dog joins our pack, funnily bringing up the rear.
Oh, we love taking in the sights and sounds when we are in a new country visiting. In Wadi Rum, we see that the writer of this article, she's sleeping inside a goat hair tent. Well, that's probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience, right? Not every day that you get to sleep in a goat hair tent in a rustic Bedouin camp. Rustic, Joe, what is that referring to?
We have that word rudimentary, meaning that it's basic. And, it's a similar idea. But also when I hear rustic, I also think maybe it's a little rough, maybe a little dirty,
And this camp is set against wind buffeting cliffs, and that just automatically gives a certain picture in your mind. But when we say wind buffeting, what do we mean, Pauline?
So I often hear something being buffeted by the wind. Here, I suppose it's like stopping the wind when it says wind buffeting. And it's just really, again, it reminds you, the two things you get from this is there are some big cliffs that it's against, and it's maybe protecting them from some pretty intense wind. When you say the wind is buffeting something, it's not just like a light breeze. It's going to be a pretty heavy wind.
Right, so the wind is just hitting up against those cliffs, but hopefully those cliffs are keeping the wind from you, at least the biggest brunt of it. Well, the next morning, she wakes up the entire camp shrieking as she clumsily mounts her ride. And so she's getting up early in the morning, and what is happening? She's shrieking. What does that mean?
I love this because that is exactly what I imagine would happen if I was the one there. You two gentlemen are a little calmer than I am.
Sometimes. Maybe not in this situation.
But I could just imagine, it's like, usually when you hear shrieking, at first you think it's like maybe fear, right? I think of like somebody seeing a snake or something shrieking. But you can also shriek in like delight or in excitement or just in like it's just a high level of emotion. So in my mind, it's like a laughing, shrieking as she's trying to get on this camel and not doing it very successfully. And it's just kind of a hilarious, ridiculous scene, right?
I mean, if you're not used to riding a camel,
well, that's the thing, right? You look at page 26 and that top photo there, and that guy, he looks like he's just riding the camel like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And, if I were getting on a camel, I would not be so graceful.
Yeah, but look at the camel. How did he get on that camel? It is so tall. Like, did a crane just pick him up and plop him on top? Or how did he get on there? I would have no idea.
I did ride a camel once.
Oh.
Really?
At an amusement park. It was a real camel. So they had, I'm sure there's lots of help
But then they
there.
had like steps, right? Like they had like a platform you to get.
Because I don't remember having a really hard time, so they must have had lots of help. Because otherwise,
I remember at like zoos and circuses, they'd have like steps up, built up with a platform. So you basically, it's the cheating version. It's not the real.
I'll even have just a hard enough time getting on a horse if the stirrup of the saddle, if that part where you put your foot in is too high. So I can't even imagine. A camel.
Yeah, because that has that extra hump.
Right?
Oh, man.
Well, here there's a guide, and he's saying yalla yalla, and that urges his herd of 5 sibling camels, and so there are other camels involved here, and that just means let's go, yalla yalla. So next time you want to say let's go, I guess.
In Arabic?
And hopefully he wasn't saying that before she had fully made it onto the camel, but I assume at this point she's on it.
And soon they were headed out, and they had this beautiful scenery in front of them. How do they describe that?
They describe this as a pre-dawn moonscape. And so you can imagine sort of the surface of the moon and what that would look like and how this desert area before the morning really gets started looks like that.
All right. And they describe the camel, and she has a name, Aliyah. And they describe the camel as cud chewing. Now, I usually think of cows when I think of cud.
Right. I think that's just like the grass or whatever they're eating. They just chew and chew and chew, right?
But then they chew. It's really kind of
This is really
disgusting
gross,
to talk
actually.
about. You might want to look it up yourself. But they chew it and swallow it, and while it comes back up,
And
and
they
then I
chew
think
it
it goes
again.
into another stomach after that. You know,
Yeah.
cows have
It's
more than one
reminding me of like
stomach.
elementary science.
Yes, exactly. Right. One of those kind of things. And this next word that she says, she says, I hypnotically watch the flaming sunrise. Now, that just means she's kind of like in a trance. It's so beautiful. And she's just kind of staring at it and taking it all in.
Right. And, we learned yesterday the word bewitchingly or bewitching. So you could say that this flaming sunrise is bewitching and it hypnotizes her, puts her in this state where she just feels like she's hypnotically watching, like can't think of anything else, like everything else has faded away and time slips away as she just watches this incredible, natural scenery.
Yeah, and it's pretty quiet as well.
Right, it's very quiet. And so for 90 beyond belief minutes, the only sounds that she hears are those camels just softly walking through the powdery dunes, and she hears some birds.
Wow.
That does sound very calming and
Yes.
hypnotic, doesn't it? It
does.
sounds like a meditation. It sounds like the kind of thing somebody would talk you through in like a pretend, like when people do meditation, they just close their eyes and they're like, imagine a place, but
Right.
she's actually getting to experience it.
Yeah, and for 90 minutes. So that's an experience that we could look forward to if we want to visit Jordan. And they end this day talking about a stray dog.
Right. They have a well-fed, so this dog clearly gets some extra food. A well-fed stray dog joins their group and brings up the rear. So they stay at the back of the group that's going somewhere. So it's a stray, but it kind of acts like it belongs to the group.
And it's just one last kind of funny detail
Yeah.
for the end of their story, right? You have all this beauty and this like calmness and so you start to have this picture of like this train of camels walking silently in the sand of it, and that's all you can see. But then all of a sudden you add in this like unexpected element, and then there's just a dog
There's a stray
following
dog.
at the end of the camels as if it belongs to the camel train. Kind of funny.
I love it, and it's a great way to write, I think, to switch gears there at the end and kind of end this day on a different note, a memorable note. And I like that phrase, bringing up the rear. I don't hear it really often, but it's a kind of a fun phrase to
Sometimes
use.
we'll use it like if you are in a travel group. So actually, Joe and I went on a tour a few weeks back when it was a motorcycle scooter tour, and so they said, okay, so and so is going to bring up the rear, so you know who's the last person
Yeah.
in the group, and they're making sure nobody else falls behind.
Right. All right. Well, we have one more day as we continue tomorrow with our travel article, A Tour Through Jordan. So we hope that you will join us for our last day of our travel article. Until then, this is Brandon
I'm Pauline.
I'm Joe.
saying goodbye.
Goodbye.